All right, let's jump right into a really incredible story. It's a story about faith, about family, and a love so powerful it could literally change the weather. We're talking about a classic showdown, sibling devotion versus sacred rules. And the outcome, well, it was nothing short of a miracle. So that brings us to the big question, right? Can a prayer from the heart actually be stronger than the most secret established rules? We're going to explore that by looking at the amazing life of Saint Scholastica, whose feast day we celebrate on February 10th. And her story, well, it gives us a pretty incredible answer. So our story starts with a set of twins, Benedict and Scholastica, born into a wealthy Roman family way back around the year 480. And you have to picture the scene. This was a really chaotic time. The Western Roman Empire was basically falling apart. But into all that uncertainty, these two future spiritual giants were born. Even from a young age, their lives seemed to run on these parallel paths of pure devotion. Benedict, as you might know, went on to establish the core principles of Western monasticism for men. But Scholastica, she became its foundational mother for women, setting up her own community just down the road from her brothers. So even though they lived in their own separate monasteries, their souls were just deeply, deeply connected. And they had this tradition, this one cherished tradition. They would meet once a year at a little farmhouse right between their communities, and they just spend the entire day in prayer and spiritual talk. These yearly meetings, this was it. This was their one chance to share their incredible love for God face to face. But what they didn't know was that their very last meeting would set up this amazing test, a true contest between the bond of love and the letter of the law. After an entire day, just lost in holy conversation, praising God, and talking about the joys of heaven, the sun started to set. And Scholastica, she had this feeling, a sense that her time was short, that this was going to be their last meeting on earth. So she made a simple, heartfelt plea to her twin brother. That's all she wanted, just a few more hours, to keep their conversation going, to savor this one final time together. But that simple, loving request was about to slam right into her brother's unshakable principles. For Benedict, the rule, a rule that he himself had written to bring order and dedication to a life in God, was absolute. There were no exceptions, not even for his twin sister, on what she felt was their last night together. He told her, flat out, he could not stay away from his cell. Now, faced with this firm refusal from her brother, Scholastica didn't argue. She didn't try to debate the finer points of the rule. Nope. Instead, she quietly turned to a much higher authority. As Benedict and his fellow monks just sat there and watched, his sister performed this really simple but incredibly profound act of faith. One account says she poured out rivers of tears, taking her appeal straight to God himself. And the change was just instantaneous. It was shocking. One second, you have a clear night sky, and the next, a massive torrential downpour with thunder and lightning. It was so intense there was no way Benedict and his companions could even think about stepping outside. Benedict was absolutely stunned. He knew right away this was not a normal storm. He turns to his sister, basically realizing she was the one who caused this whole tempest. Her response just says it all, doesn't it? Her appeal, which came from this place of pure, deep love, had been heard. Benedict's strict rule was just overruled by a divine intervention. He really had no choice. He had to stay. And so they did. They stayed awake the entire night, continuing their holy conversation until morning. They filled their souls with talk of the spiritual life, before finally parting ways for the very last time. It was just 3 days later. Benedict was back in his cell at the monastery, deep in prayer. He happened to look up towards the heavens, and that's when he saw a truly beautiful and supernatural sign. Wow, the symbolism here is just so powerful. The dove, for centuries, has been a symbol of purity, innocence, and the Holy Spirit. This vision meant that Scholastic's pure soul was making its flight directly to God. So even in his grief, Benedict was filled with joy for his sister. He had her body brought to his own monastery, Monte Cassino, and later to rest in the exact tomb he had prepared for himself. He wanted to make sure that, just as their souls were one in God, their bodies would be united in death. This story, as amazing as it is really just the beginning of her lasting influence. An influence that, believe it or not, continues to shape the world even today. See, Scholastica's legacy isn't just about one miracle. She's revered as a foundational figure for religious women, really paving the way for countless others to lead lives of monastic devotion. And it makes perfect sense. She's the one people pray to for protection from storms. So how do we make sense of this incredible event? The man who first wrote her story down, Pope St. Gregory the Great, he offered this very simple and beautiful explanation. In that contest between Benedict's rule and Scholastica's prayer, her power was greater, simply because her love was greater. If you found this explainer helpful, inspiring, entertaining, and informative, please be sure to share, like, and subscribe. We really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.